Android Wear apps are not generally aiming to be massive apps that you spend a lot of time on. Primarily, smartwatch apps are to show the user quick bits of information or allow them to do quick tasks without taking their phone out of their pocket. That's the idea, and that's why cards are so central to how Android Wear works. So a card is something very simple that looks more or less like this. So it's how you would show a quick bit of information to the user. So in this video, we're going to see how to create cards and customize them a little bit. And by the way, this site, developer.android.com/training/wearables, is really useful if you want to figure out how to do anything with Android Wear. So I would recommend checking this out if you have any problems. All right, so let's go and create our card fragment. I'm going to go back to our Android Wear demo app and work on that one for now. So I'll get rid of the code that we added before. And let's head to the rectangular activity. And this is where we're going to be doing most of our work. So first off, you may have noticed that in the developer guide here, we started off with something called a box inset layout. Now, if I just jump over to, again, the Android training materials here, the box inset layout basically looks like this. So it's not the most efficient use of space, but it will reasonably cleverly fill in the gaps around the edge so it doesn't just look like a box like that. But it is a convenient way to get a square layout on both screens. So you could use exactly the same layout on your square and round screens. And that's what Google are recommending here, so I'm going to use that as well. So let's just copy this code over and replace our rectangular activity main with that. So I'm just going to get rid of that background there because we're not using that. You can see it's pretty straightforward. The only two options there are match parent for layout width and height. And similarly here, we've now got our frame layout, which simply matches the parent as well. So far, that doesn't actually show us anything because there's no content in there. There's only the frame layout. But that's when we need our Java. So let's copy this down. And we'll put it in the onLayout inflated method. And we'll just bring in all the necessary classes. And then let's just see what this is doing. So we're creating a fragment manager, which we've seen managers a lot before, obviously allows us to manage our fragment. And in this case, we're creating a card fragment. Then we begin what's known as a fragment transaction, which allows us to work with the fragment. Then we create a card fragment variable, which is created with 2 strings and an image. So let's create those ourselves. We've got the title. So I'm just going to put hello Rob. We've got the message. Something like that. Hello, how are you today? And you can see we can just leave it at that, but we can also add an image which will be shown just there. So we're just looking for a small kind of icon image there. So let's just find one of the built-in icons. What shall we use? A plus. Okay, so now we've created our card fragment and then we're adding that to the frame layout, which has an ID of frame_layout, which we've added here. So we don't need to change that ID. And then we commit the fragment transaction, which essentially just means apply this to our layout. Okay, so let's check that out. I'm going to run it on the rectangular screen. Notice that what we've done so far will crash if we try and run it on a round screen because we haven't got the frame layout ID. While that's running, I'm just going to copy and paste everything down to round activity. So now it would work fine on both a round or a rectangular watch. So I've got my round one running, but I want to test it out on a rectangular. So let's get the square one running as well. Generally, when you're testing Android Wear apps, it's a good idea to have both emulators open at once, because you're probably going to want to be fairly constantly testing on both to make sure that it looks and works well on both screen layouts. And there we go. You can see we've got our nice card layout there. I think the icon that we chose was probably a little large and makes it all look a little bit strange, but you can see how that would all fit together. While we're here, let's just trial it on the round screen as well. Make sure it looks good on that screen size too. And there you go. You can see that even though we're inside the box inset layout, we've got this nice rounded, it doesn't just block it off at a box there. It's more intelligent than that. All right, so that's how you work with cards in your apps. I'll just show you very briefly the card frame. If you want to customize this layout, then you can do that pretty easily by just adding for example here, a card scroll view, which will allow you to scroll through content within your card. And then once you've added a card frame, you can add whatever you like in there. So they've added a linear layout with 2 text views. So they've more or less recreated the default layout, but themselves. But you could add whatever you like there, images, text, anything. So that's pretty straightforward and works in exactly the same way as the card fragment that we just created. All right, so now we're finished with cards and we're going to look at another very handy layout object, the list.